Here with us now, Middle East expert Lisa Daftari. She's editor-in-chief of the Foreign Desk. Also with us, CNN's military analyst, retired Lieutenant Colonel Rick Francona. And Colonel, first to you, this is a stunning fall for ISIS, considering what, 3 months ago, some 18 days, they planted this flag, they declared God's kingdom on earth, they placed all their chips on creating a caliphate as proof of some kind of divine mandate. Does that fairy tale now fall alongside Raqqa?
Yeah, and you know, as Arwa said, we have to be careful to not call this the defeat of ISIS. This is the defeat of ISIS in Raqqa. This is the end of their territorial ambitions. It's the end of their territorial claims. But the group goes on, and the battle is not over in Syria. The battle is shifting to the southeast. We're going to fight the major battle, the end battle, if you will. The last battle will be the Battle of the Euphrates Valley. We've got ISIS fighters coming from Iraq across the border into the valley in Syria. We've got these people that were allowed to escape. Remember, there was a deal that allowed many of the ISIS fighters to leave the city. And now they are in Deir ez-Zor, so the battle is shaping up there. But this, no doubt, this is a major victory. This removes their capital. It takes away a lot of the cachet that they had as an organization. So, yes, this is a big deal.
And Lisa, as Colonel Francona said, ISIS, it will live on, and it will probably hold other pieces of territory as well. But that territory will not be in Iraq. It won't be in Syria. It won't be where Islamic scripture talks about the apocalypse, the end of times. It won't be it won't be as special as Raqqa and Mosul, right?
Well, it may be in Raqqa, and it may be in Syria and Iraq. I think what we've seen is cities fall and cities rise back up, and I think that that's the most important question tonight as we learn about this news. It was the vulnerability in Syria and in Iraq, but more so in Syria, that gave rise to ISIS. It was the vulnerability of the people not wanting Bashar al-Assad in power and creating that power vacuum that led to the rise of ISIS. So what will be the future of Syria? Will it lead to other groups rising? Will it lead to ISIS coming back? They're not calling this a victory quite yet. It's about 90% back in the hands or out of the hands of ISIS. But still, what will happen now? Are they going to retreat and plan something on a larger scale? And more importantly, are they going to double down and put all their energy towards their online efforts to have local recruits in Europe and other places in the world to launch their attacks there?
And Colonel Francona, this is an important point about having the caliphate, especially having it in Syria and Iraq. It was a selling point to attract foreign fighters. Now they've lost all this territory. I think 87% of the territory which they once held. Obviously those foreign fighters have nowhere to go now for training, but what about those foreign fighters who are still afar? Obviously it becomes much harder sell to inspire them to go on and carry out attacks, doesn't it?
It's interesting, John. We've seen over the last few months, because ISIS can see the handwriting on the wall, pardon my Babylonian reference there, but they know that they're going to lose this territorial empire that they had in Iraq and Syria. So they've already changed their messaging. They've primarily started this in Iraq. We see a lot more digital outreach among ISIS. And surprisingly, to many of us observers, how it resonates among the Sunni population, because ISIS is telling them you're dealing with a Shia-dominated and Iranian-influenced organization in Baghdad has disenfranchised you. So we're seeing them try to change their messaging there. In Syria, they're, as Lisa said, they're down, but they're not out. So this is not over. But ISIS is smart enough. They've been very adept in their messaging over the years. They know what resonates, and that's how they're going to change their message. So I think we're going to see more inspired memberships of members of ISIS, not so much foreign fighters coming to the caliphate.
Okay, well, here's what Hassan Hassan, author of ISIS Inside the Army of Terror, told The New Yorker. Only a fool would call this a victory. It's only the expulsion of ISIS fighters from a wasteland. It's not a victory, not only because of the destruction, it's also not a victory because there's, because there's a shame is like a political track to supplement the military track. That's the Achilles heel of Operation Inherent Resolve. They don't have a political vision about what will happen after ISIS. So, Lisa, you touched on this. There is a plan, but is there a workable plan that's going to actually hold up?
Right, and I think that's what everyone has been kicking the can down the road, and now that all of this is being cleared out. ISIS was this kind of security blanket of sorts that people were hiding behind. Whoever's involved in Syria was there for ISIS, to fight ISIS. Turkey's there to fight Kurds, they said they're there to fight ISIS. Iran is there to prop up Bashar al-Assad. They said they're there to fight ISIS, to rid of the jihadi influence, etc. And you look at all of these different, and now that ISIS would potentially be cleared away, it's that huge elephant in the room is to say, what's going to happen to the future of Syria? And will this, I mean, instead of patting ourselves on the back, yes, Raqqa lost their main stage. They can no longer behead a young boy for smoking a cigarette in the main, circle of town to have people watch these gruesome things. But, having these recruits come from all around the world to the caliphate, to Syria and Iraq, that's died down a long time ago. It slowed down a while back, right? Because they saw that they couldn't get people to come. So I think that they've already redirected their message to the online recruitment, to doing, you don't need a whole bomb. You can use your car to ram into people. You can use a kitchen knife, etc. So I think that ISIS is always one step ahead. And I think that that's what we need to remember here, and to say it's the vulnerability on the ground. And for the U.S., for the allied forces, the question is to say, do we want a seat at that table for the future of Syria, for the future of Iraq, and what stake do we have, and do we want to be involved on a humanitarian level, on a political level, and what do we want to see for the future of those two countries?
Colonel Frank, I want to finish up with a claim made by the U.S. President, essentially that the success in this fight against ISIS is the result of essentially his presidency. This is what he said.
I totally changed rules of engagement. I totally changed our military. I totally changed the attitudes of the military, and they have done a fantastic job. Yeah, ISIS is now giving up. They're giving up. They're raising their hands. They're walking off. Nobody's ever seen that before.
Why did that happen before?
Because you didn't have Trump as your president. I mean, it was a big difference. I mean, there's a big difference if you look at the military now.
Colonel Francona, is that a fair claim to make? Did Donald Trump bring in new tactics that weren't tried before, that were the game changer?
There's a lot of bluster there, but the bottom line actually is true. He did loosen the rules of engagement. It did change the tactics. I talked to Air Force pilots who were involved in this. They said they were able to react to emerging targets faster. They were able to put ordnance on targets faster and more ordnance. So, yes, the claim is true, but there's a lot of bluster there.
Very quickly, did that come with a lot more civilian casualties, though, those changes?
Well, you could make that argument, but there were very strict rules in place, and those didn't change. And they instituted additional rules allowing the Kurds on the ground to determine when ordnance would be expended anywhere near them. So they were trying to address that problem. They knew that. When they lessened the amount of air sorties, the Kurds came to them and said, you got to keep this up. We know that there are casualties, but we need the firepower, because, as you know, the Kurds are a light force. They didn't have a lot of armor, a lot of artillery. They were relying on air power to replace that.
Colonel, thank you. Colonel Frank, Colonel Lisa Daftari, we appreciate you both being with us. It is a big story on a big day. Thank you.